Yeah, but what we were just talking about. Hey, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to Office Hours.
Yes, indeed. Coming live from San Diego on a beautiful Friday afternoon. Hope everybody's well tonight. This afternoon or whatever time zone you're at.
Yeah. For Barry, it's like 8 hours ahead. So
Yep.
it's probably 10 p.m. over there, right?
Yes, indeed. Hi there, Lucky.
Hello,
Good to
everybody.
see ya.
Z Corona, Flashpoint Zero, The Suspicious Pixel, Gecky, Barry, and Lucky. Hello, everybody. President.
Yes, indeed. All sorts of good folks in here today. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are going to talk about working with brands today on the show. So we'll dive into that in just a few minutes here. We do have a couple of announcements for you. The main one is that there will actually be no office hours next week. We're gonna be out of office for a bit next week, so we'll have more information on that for you guys in a few days here. But it just doesn't make sense for us to jump into a show on Friday, so wanted to give you all the heads up on that. So we'll make sure and make this an extra good show for you today, so that you're in good shape. For the
Sweet.
next one.
Awesome, yeah. Another interesting industry announcement, Nintendo. They just announced, they just changed their content creation guidelines for streaming and stuff like that. So now I think content creators will be allowed to monetize their videos for, because before they would have to sign up for the Nintendo Creator Program, but now it's completely
Yes.
different. And we have that page open here, so we can just kind of go down the list.
Yeah, so that's really awesome. Can somebody maybe post the link in the chat?
I totally
one of
got
the
it.
mods. Yeah. So sort of the difference of what's going on here, just as Zach mentioned previously, to put monetized YouTube content on Nintendo games on YouTube, you had to be a part of the Nintendo Creator Program, which could be a little bit restrictive. And now they have opened that up so that content creators can put Nintendo content on YouTube and monetize it and make some money doing content creation. So that's really, really awesome. So they're, in their official statement, it says here, as long as you follow some basic rules, we will not object to your use of gameplay footage and/or screenshots captured from games which Nintendo owns the copyright. Nintendo game content. In the content that you create for appropriate video and image sharing sites. With some guidelines, you may monetize your videos and channels using the monetization methods separately specified by Nintendo. So they do have a few guidelines on that specifically. Other forms of monetization of our intellectual property for commercial purposes are not permitted. They want you to include your creative input and commentary. So they don't necessarily just want you just posting like just straight pictures of Nintendo content, like a series of screenshots or something like that,
Yeah.
etc.
If I remember correctly before, the old Nintendo Creation Program, like once you were a part of that, like you had to be a part of that to create Nintendo content. And in order for that to happen on your YouTube, for example, I think like most of your YouTube channel's content would have to be Nintendo related content, right? And now, like nowadays, like anyone can create Nintendo content, as long as it fits within their guidelines. And also, they're not permitted to imply or state that their videos are officially affiliated with Nintendo, which was the case before.
Yes. Another note in here, you're only permitted to use Nintendo game content that has been officially released or from promo materials officially released by Nintendo. Product trailers, Nintendo Directs, that sort of thing. So likely, like the case for Nintendo emulators, like if you're playing with a Game Boy emulator on your PC and playing Pokemon or what have you, any of their IP, that probably wouldn't work out. And they still reserve the right to remove any content that they believe is unlawful, infringing, inappropriate, not in line with these guidelines, which is pretty open to interpretation. So if essentially consider it as if they don't like it, they can probably find a way to take
Yeah.
it down. I'm not saying that they will necessarily, but that's something to know.
Yeah, just a heads up.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and jump into our first topic. Today, this is the brand episode, so we'll basically be covering why brands sponsor streamers, endemic brands, non-endemic brands, and effective brand sponsorships. Wow, I can't believe I did that. That was
nailed
pretty
that.
cool.
That was impressive.
But yeah, so why do brands sponsor streamers? So brands obviously aren't sponsoring streamers out of the goodness of their heart. They see it as a business opportunity to kind of like grow, their brand and kind of like get the message out, right? Because with broadcasting and live broadcasting, they see value in broadcasters by seeing that they create content on a regular basis. They see that there's an audience for their content, and they also find that content creators are also able to bring some level of influence to their audiences.
Yep, absolutely. And honestly, that really, like Benobi here's comment hits that right on the mark. They say that that these changes in Nintendo's guidelines really highlight how companies are valuing content creators, giving them the freedom to promote how and where they will. Just like you were saying, Zach, content creators just organically, whether they're being sponsored to play a game or not, by generating content around the game, they're raising awareness of whatever game and whatever features that has, which has inherent value to the brand. So that's a big reason why companies do look to sponsor prominent influencers to promote their games.
Yeah, and it's a very new way of like marketing for these companies and brands. So it's very different how a lot of these brands will kind of look into like traditional like advertising, where they're looking for like people sticking to like a script, right? And they want to look for people who are like hitting all the talking points and getting the message that they're looking to get out, like out to their audiences. So what's really interesting is like influencers, they're not salespeople, they don't really do like straight up commercials like all the time where they're talking from a script.
Yep.
They're doing a live broadcast in front of their audiences, and they're gonna be themselves. They're gonna be doing the content that they like to create because that's what they're good at, right?
Yes.
So like when brands and companies see that, they can definitely see the value in those types of things, and that's when they start reaching out to influencers to work with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, because these influencers can offer something different than if they hired an actor to do a spot for a TV commercial or something like that. Just like you said, these guys aren't running off a script. They will. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is not to say that some brands haven't tried to make influencers use scripts.
Very true.
But as us, as both Twitch viewers and people that, at least here at OPG and many other folks that work in the industry or just follow content creators, that's never going to be the content creator's best content. Having some guidelines and features to show off is one thing, but having a script is never going to be the same kind of content that the creator's audience is used to seeing and loves.
Yeah, and as a streamer, if a brand is looking to work with you and they're like insisting on a script, then you should be able to like push back on that and tell them like, hey, that's not really in line with my content, and I don't think that's going to work quite with my channel and the content that I produce. And when you're kind of like sticking to a script that you don't feel comfortable about, your audience can kind of see that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
they're very receptive to those types of things. So if you don't feel comfortable doing it, then it's more likely your audience can tell that you're not comfortable doing it, and then it's not as an effective like campaign.
Absolutely. That's a really, really good point. So those are a couple of reasons why brands sponsor streamers. And we've been using games as an example. We'll talk about further on both endemic as well as non-endemic brands in the space. But brands have realized that, especially Twitch is the platform that we work with the most here at OPG. but other live streaming platforms as well as content creation platforms such as YouTube are really great ways to get their products in front of a new generation of consumers. A huge, like there's a lot of people in many age brackets, but especially sort of young professional demographics that consume a lot of quote-unquote non-traditional media, online live streaming content, online video content, rather than just traditional sports and news as you'd find in a cable package. So as brands see that there are large audiences watching content on these platforms, they want to get their products, whether those are games or anything else under the sun, in front of those audiences.
So when we ask the question why brands sponsor streamers, the Suspicious Pixel says, because they're a good representation of their brand. Yeah, that's definitely true. And it works even better if, the streamer already uses that brand's products and stuff like that, because it's very organic, right?
Absolutely.
But another thing to take note of is, if you're a streamer and you're thinking of if you plan on, potentially doing like sponsored work in the future, I would say it's very important to pay attention to your channel's branding, especially on social media, like Twitter, Facebook, any of that stuff. Because one thing is brands do when they're thinking of people to work with, well, they'll dive deep down into your social media and they'll look at everything that you post, right? They're gonna check if you're brand friendly. Does this person cuss? Does this person talk about obscene things? Do we really want to sponsor this person, and do we really think that they're a good fit for our brand?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should not be, genuine about what you say on social media and what you say on stream, but I'm just saying it's one of the things that brands do is they pay attention to what you say.
Absolutely, it is. Dive deep down into your soul. That's a dangerous endeavor, Oliver. That's not to say that some swearing is going to sink your chances of landing a sponsorship with a certain brand. If a brand is seriously considering you to promote their products, they're likely familiar with your channel to some capacity already, and all of a sudden, if a certain streamer is known for having some more R-rated jokes in their channel, and then they get a sponsorship, and all of a sudden it's a G-rated Disney movie, it's not going to be the same kind of broadcast that their audiences are necessarily going to love.
Right.
So there's responsibility on both ends, but that being said, using smart tactics and both in social media as well as just living your daily life, and is a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So I think from there we can jump into the next topic. So I'm going to push this button of James Harden, and we're going to move on to endemic brands.
Yes, indeed.
So yeah, what are endemic brands?
Endemic brands are brands that these are companies. Publishers under the umbrella of companies, publishers, agencies, just about any sort of business that already operates in or around the gaming space. So examples of an endemic sponsored campaign could be a sponsored streaming campaign for a video game, a new release title, or a DLC release that's coming out for an existing title. That would be an endemic campaign within the game space. Other endemic categories that we would consider in that same bucket would be things like computer peripherals. Just like Lucky Misfit said, Razer, Corsair, Origin PC are some brands that our clients work with that specifically make products and market their products to gamers. They make products to gamers, for gamers. Which is pretty awesome, as all gamers ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Just like Zach mentioned before, these companies are looking for people that already use their products, people that can be enthusiastic about using them and let their audience know that they, hey, we make this really awesome thing. This is why I like it. You can see me using it on stream or in my videos. and you can get one for yourself if you like.
So like something that we kind of see kind of get a little weird is like, why would a video game sponsor want to sponsor people if they're already going to play the video game, right?
Yep.
So there's a lot of reasons for that. Sometimes it could just be like they want to make sure that everybody is playing a certain game like at launch, right? Like they have this huge event and they're going to make sure that that event like covers like all of Twitch. Some of that content hits YouTube and everybody talks about it through Twitter. And some of the strategy behind that is not only are they kind of influencing like their audiences, but they're also influencing other streamers to check out the game as well.
Yes.
And it just kind of like blows up their game and like in that directory, and you can just kind of tell that people are getting hooked onto that game. I think one of the best examples I've seen of this is like I've been seeing a lot of like MTG Arena sponsored work, right? If like when MTG Arena, I think it's been around for quite a while. It's still in beta, but it's been around for quite a while. And I think when they had their first public beta launch, a lot of streamers were covering that game, both like organically for free, and there was a lot of sponsored work as well. But it seems like they got a lot of like variety streamers who wouldn't like typically play that type of game. They're not really inclined towards like card games to participate in that. And a lot of them, judging from like how it's been going and how I've been seeing it on Twitch, is people have been actually like really enjoying it to the point where like even if they're not doing sponsored work, they're starting to play it like just for fun.
Absolutely. And that's a kind of an interesting example. Magic is a game that has been around forever. It's been around as long as I've known about games. 25 years or something like that now. And by getting, like there are people that have probably, 1993, that would be 25 years now. There are people that watch these other broadcasters that maybe would never play Magic organically, but they do a couple of sponsored streams for MTG Arena. Their audience sees them having fun playing it and says, holy crap, maybe I'm gonna dig my Magic cards out of the bin in my in my attic, or maybe I'll download this and give it a try. So
yeah, kind of like what Lucky said, right? She downloaded that game because of all the sponsored streams. I also did that, and I'm guilty of staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning today just to play some Magic the Gathering drafts. And like I personally have never been into card games. I played Yu-Gi-Oh when I was in elementary school and middle school, and after that I was just like, okay, it's not really for me. But Magic the Gathering is just like, it's an addiction. And like every streamer that I've seen like stream the game, like they've really got me into it.
Yeah. And I've also similarly been influenced to download. I'd never played Magic before, but I downloaded MTG Arena after seeing a bunch of our clients playing it, and I ended up buying the Magic Game Night, which is a pack that you can actually use to play with your friends at home. So raising brand awareness in people that have either played games before or are completely new users. And hi there, Cobalt. Great to see you.
But yeah. Some other kind of like we talked about, like gaming peripherals, like hardware, all that's endemic. It's kind of a little, it's much different from like video game sponsorships, right? Because on Twitch, like your bread and butter is going to be like streaming video games or whatever you'd like to stream, really. But a lot of that is streaming video games. So a lot of what's involved in like playing video games is obviously the peripherals, right? So once you have like anyone can get like those old mechanical like office keyboards from like 1999 and kind of play video games like that, right? But the interesting thing is like a lot of these endemic companies have crafted peripherals specifically for gamers. And now they're actually starting to craft a lot of like products specifically built for streamers. One of the biggest things is like the Go XLR, which I know a lot of streamers are excited about. So I think what happened like on Twitter and what happened when like Go XLR debuted at TwitchCon, you can definitely see that they were also looking for streamers to promote the Go XLR. And it's been a huge success. Like a lot of streamers want to get their hands on that mixer, and it's getting to a point where I think they're like almost at a product.
Yeah, so that's a great example of another endemic brand that's looking into it. That's not VR microwave at it. There you go. Be in the food. Don't just eat the food. Experience it. Other examples of peripherals, like Zach was mentioning keyboards before. Mice, like for example, the Razer Naga. One of our clients, Towley, is sponsored by Razer, and they do the Naga, the kind of premier and what has been I think it was the first ever MMO mouse, mouse for an MMO game. And for me as a World of Warcraft player, I couldn't play an MMO again without a mouse that had all those little buttons on the side, because it literally changes the way that you can play the game. So hardware and other companies are responding to the needs of gamers and developing products specifically for them. And then partnering with somebody such as Towley, who is a premier WoW streamer, is a natural fit for them.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's like if you're like, let's say you're a viewer, right, and you're watching a streamer that you really like, and you're already thinking of like looking for new peripherals, a new headphone, anything, then you're probably just gonna notice that Towley has like a really sweet headphones, and then you're gonna look it up and see if it's like within your budget. And if you see that it's within your budget, you might even jump on that just because you're getting that direct influence.
Yep, exactly. So, just a few of those reasons why brands sponsor streamers, get their products in front of both audience members as well as other streamers. The next thing I want to talk about on that note is the concept of meta influencers, which is something that we pay attention to a lot here at OPG. What is a meta influencer? That is somebody that we would consider that influences the influencers of the world. So these are the streamers that other streamers watch, and these can be, some of these are the biggest streamers out there, and some of these are small streamers as well, who they do the groundwork to find whatever games they think are coming out, whether they're indie or AAA titles, that they think are going to be so freaking awesome to stream. And they can find these games, other streamers watch them to figure out what they want to play on stream next. So that's something that we will include when we are discussing sponsorship opportunities with brands, is seeding some of these campaigns with these meta influencers, because if a bunch of streamers watch a particular streamer who does sponsored work covering a certain game or a certain product like the Go XLR or something like that, these people are going to say, hey, that's awesome, I want to play that for my audience. Hey, that's awesome, I want to use that in front of my audience, and it becomes a snowball effect.
Bonobi has a two-part question here. Question one was, how common are long-term sponsorships? For example, Razer sponsorships for X amount of months for X amount of products. Well, to that, I guess I would say they're fairly common, especially when it comes to hardware sponsorships, right? Not so common when it comes to video game sponsorships for obvious reasons. I think with video game sponsorships, they're looking to do like timed activations that are more centered around launch, beta, like DLC content. But definitely more common for hardware sponsorships, where they always have or hardware and peripherals where they're constantly creating new products, like new things that that people could use, and it's all like basically big, small pieces of like a larger puzzle that you can create for your own gaming setup.
Yes. So these brands will have marketing budgets that open up every year, yearly budgets that break down into quarterly budgets, and a portion of these budgets, especially for some of these endemic game companies, are dedicated towards influencer sponsorships. So that those sponsorships will oftentimes be geared towards really either, a lot of them, those opportunities open up more for quote unquote larger streamers with a large following across platforms, and streamers that have a large number of folks watching them at any given time. just because that is still something that companies value heavily. The more eyes that somebody has on every minute of this influencer's content, the more valuable that partnership is to them. It's ad minutes for them. And then on top of that, these sponsorships are not always reserved for the largest influencers, but also the people that are at these companies are also humans. Humans naturally make friends with each other. That's how people work. And they tend to work with people that are good partners for them, as well as that can be friendly and develop a relationship with them.
Part 2 of Benomi's question is, how often do talking points for sponsorships change? I think that completely depends on their goals, right?
Yep.
I think they can change as little to as not changing at all,
Yep.
or they can be changing as often as possible. But it just really depends on what that company is looking for. For example, they could be like this company would sometimes want you to drive traffic to their website, for example. That could be the first 3 months of that, where it's like, hey, it makes sense. I want you to, we want people to go to our website. But then, after a couple more months, it could change a little bit more, where it's something geared towards other events. Hey, we're going to be going to TwitchCon. Come check out our booth at TwitchCon. I'll be streaming from there.
Yep.
There's plenty of different talking points to cover for brands, but I think that just changes, and you can kind of see that more if you're more in direct communication with a brand, with your sponsor as much as possible.
Omid says, long-term sponsorship talking points don't change often enough. Companies need to be refreshing what people are talking about so that people have something new to share. That's right. So if it's a brand is a paper company, right? And this paper company has sponsored an influencer for a few years now. Everybody in this person's audience, except for some occasional new folks tuning in, over the course of a few years, you've likely activated almost everybody in your audience. So unless there's somebody new coming in here, they're gonna be like, oh, paper, it's great. You can write on it. You can make into airplanes. You can do whatever you want. Whereas if a company runs different initiatives that give that streamer, influencer, whatever platform they're on, different talking points that they can cover, oh, hey, our new paper technology doesn't give paper cuts. You can mess with it all you want, you'll never get a paper cut. Yeah, paper hats. Maybe they made it more foldable so you can turn into hats, you can do whatever with it. Or you have started using repurposed wood pulp to make your paper, so it's more environmentally friendly. Whatever the thing is, if you give that person more things to talk about and new initiatives for them to tell their audience, number one, it gives the streamer an excuse to tell their audience something new about the product that they like, or a new deal where maybe they can get something awesome for a lower price, rather than just, as Omid says in chat here, a sponsorship that literally just sends the checks and never communicates with them.
Yeah, it's very important to I think companies should definitely be doing this more often, but I really think it's important to get your whoever you're sponsoring. It's very important to get them excited for whatever product they're going to be promoted, right?
Exactly.
Because if you're talking about the same thing over and over again, you're going to be talking about the same thing over again. You're just going to be like, hey, oh, it's another sale, or hey, we're talking about another product here. But whenever there's something big to actually get hyped about, and maybe even something big to get hyped about, or something even that you can announce beforehand, in secret, where it kind of generates this hype that you can't really talk about soon, but when you come out with that announcement, you're really just exploding on whatever you're talking about. That's some things. Those are the type of the things that content creators can feed off of.
Absolutely. Benobi asks, so if a sponsor hasn't updated talking points in a while, will you take the initiative to try and get them to offer update suggestions, or is it wiser to just reconsider the sponsorship? That is a decision that is up to the individual influencer and what they want to do. However, something that we do at OPG is if somebody is struggling for new things to talk about for a brand, we will, scour the internet, find announcements or updates or sales or various deals that are going on to give them something to help talk about.
Yeah, and it's part of that communication. If like an
Yep.
individual influencer is working with a company, I think I would highly recommend making that communication to them
Yep.
and saying like, hey, there's not a whole lot I can talk about as much anymore. Is there you have anything exciting going on? And from there, like the company will think about it. And if they come up with something, then like you've kind of helped drive that relationship so that it's easier for you to do the work in the long run.
Absolutely. And they'll value that and they'll remember that you came to them and said, hey, I want to do more. I want to do this.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of like, for example, like we're nearing the holiday season, right? I mean, from there, it's kind of just, if you're sponsored by a company, it's kind of something you would think about, like, hey, are you going to do any holiday sales? Are you guys going to do any big holiday giveaways that maybe my channel could get really excited about?
Absolutely. Because influencers love to give their audience deals. Their audience is the one that supports them ultimately and allows them to live the lifestyle that they live. And they'll take on brand sponsorships and partnerships as a way to supplement that and help make sure that they can live securely and rely on other factors a little bit less. And whenever they can give back to their audience, whether that's giveaways, whether that's offering awesome deals on things that they know their audience are excited about, it's something that a lot of influencers really love. So that's something that we will recommend to brands.
And as a
help get going
content
as well.
creator, oh sorry.
Oh no, I'm done.
As a content creator, right? You create content on a daily basis, right? So that shouldn't change at all when you start working with a sponsor. Sponsors, they do have like a set goal, right? They have like one set objective, and not all of them will like 100% understand the thought process behind your content creation.
Yep.
Which is why it's important to communicate that, right? If you're able, like as a content creator and being sponsored from a sponsor, you should be able to think of like content to create for them, you know, because they're paying you to do that.
Absolutely. Libra LeBron says, do y'all think it's better to do like multiple smaller deals that are done after a week or less, or long-term like 6-month plus contracts with a brand? I don't think there's a right answer there necessarily either way. Do what makes sense to you, and certain categories, certain things are going to make more sense or less sense. For example, game partnerships, if it's around the launch of a specific game, will likely be a shorter term sponsorship deal for either a one-off thing or maybe for a week or two immediately after launch. However, if there are longer term like awareness or consulting sponsorships, those can be longer term as well.
Yeah, it's ultimately what's up to you, right?
It's up to you, and it's also up to the company's goals. The company will have goals as to what they want to accomplish with the money that they put into their marketing budget. Discuss with whatever brand you're working with, find out what their goals are, and find out how you can best help them achieve those goals, and let them know that. Let them know that, hey, I can help you in this way, this way, and this way, and this is you know your audience the best. Let them know, let the brand know what your audience is receptive to, and you can work on something.
Yeah, and one thing I did want to note, if you do think about taking on a long-term sponsorship, just make sure that like the work balance between the value of what you're getting paid for is worth it, right? Like if you're gonna sign a contract for 6 months,
Yep.
You don't want to be having to work to do like a sponsored stream every 2 times a week for 6 months.
Yeah.
Like that type of work is just gonna overload you. So kind of like the value that you're giving to sponsors is less about doing certain activations for these longer term things, and more just about general brand awareness, right?
Yes.
You have channel branding where you might have a panel image below your stream. You might have a chat bot that kind of auto posts every hour or so, every 30 minutes about this your sponsor that you're super excited to work for. And that might just include maybe doing some once a month types of things like giveaways. But I wouldn't say I wouldn't say to do multiple things each month for a long period of time, because that could burn you out.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go on your example, Zach, if you do take on multiple long-term sponsorships that are really obligation heavy like that, where you're doing, a couple of sponsored streams a week, then and if you take on 2 or 3 of those partnerships, pretty soon you have like with 3, if you're doing 2 sponsored streams a week, and we don't usually recommend that folks do more than 1 sponsored stream in any given stream period. So assuming you're streaming once per day, all of a sudden you're up to 6 days with sponsored streams per week, and then you have 1 day to take a day off. Or if you don't want to take a day off, then if you have any other smaller or shorter term sponsorships, like where are you going to find the time to do anything like that? So don't overload yourself. Definitely be cognizant of what you're taking on, rather than and plan out what your life is going to look like if you're going into a longer term sponsorship relationship.
Definitely. Minna says, generally, would those short-term sponsorships be a bigger payout compared to the long-term ones, or are they in the same ballpark at the end of the day when it comes to the time paid? Omid just kind of answered the question here. Short-terms usually pay more because when someone is doing long-term stuff, they'll want a bulk discount, sort of. Also, the work kind of spreads across the months and is hard to calculate, but is certainly more work overall. Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, like with short-term activations, like we talked about, a lot of the endemic stuff comes from like, being activated for a certain thing, like a video game launch. And, once you, like, if that video game launch just entails you of maybe 2 to 6 hours of playing that game, you could be getting paid quite a lot for that 2 to 6 hours, more than you would get paid. And if there's multiple of those 2 to 6 hour streams, like maybe every month or so, then the payout might be bigger, depending on the company, than longer term sponsorships. I'd like, just kind of like what Omid said, I think for longer term sponsorships, you should kind of like focus on products that you actually like and will probably use, like on the daily.
Well, for all sponsorships, I would focus on products that you actually like.
Oh, yeah, of course. But like in terms of like long-term sponsorships, like peripherals, like hardware, all that stuff.
Yep. If it's something like a video game, like that you're excited to play, like maybe you're super excited for, and this is in the past now, I know, but God of War, right? You played all the other God of War games, you loved them, you're super ready for God of War, and you get a long-term sponsorship to play God of War like over the next 6 months, and you're playing 40 hours of God of War a month. In a game like that, where it's just a linear single-player story game, there's no real end game. You can maybe, you beat the game and then you go into challenge mode. Like, you are responsible then for creating all this content around something that you don't necessarily want to put that much time into. So just be cognizant.
Sparrow McGee says, are sponsors also receptive to extending short-term deals if it was to the liking of both parties? Most definitely, yeah, Absolutely. Most definitely. Actually, I think the majority of like long-term sponsorships start that way. It usually starts with like short-term activations. Like, it could be like, doing a giveaway. It could even jump into like, maybe doing like a 1-month test sponsorship to see like how that partnership goes, like how that monthly like channel branding goes, to maybe even 3 months. And, after that period, it's kind of up to the influencer to kind of like talk to that company and be like, hey, I think we did some pretty good work here. Like, you can go ahead and share whatever statistics you might have from your dashboard, and they can look at that, and you could say like, hey, my channel is really receptive to that. What are your guys' thoughts? The company would probably give you that the feedback that you're looking for. And it eventually goes into the discussion of renewing that partnership, right?
Absolutely.
Do we want to move forward with like working for like a more longer term thing, or do we want to like just maybe work off on like one-off partnerships every now and then?
Absolutely. And if you have prior knowledge of the product or product brand ahead of time, you can also and for a fact that you like these products. You can let them know going into it, say, hey, I am interested, like I'm super excited for the short-term deal. I'm really excited to see how things work and how receptive my audience is to this thing. And is that something that if things go well on my end and things also go well on your end, our audiences are receptive, you're seeing your KPIs, key performance indicators, come in on your side too. Is this something that you would be open to extending should things go well? It's always a question that, don't necessarily promise that if you have never tried this product before. But if it's something that you have used personally, you really like, and then work with the people that you're working with at that brand. And it may or may not be a possibility, but you can put it in their head and they'll think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Minda asks, now would the negotiations for these short-term sponsorships take place a week or so before the actual planned work, or are these done months ahead of time? Typically, months ahead of time, but we are in the video game industry, so sometimes things just move like crazy fast.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't think, anyone really tries to be unorganized, but things just like happen very quickly, right?
Yep.
You could be talking about things like, 6 months beforehand, not hear from them. I'm not saying this is normal, but I'm saying you could be talking to them 6 months beforehand, not hear from them for another 5 months. And then, on that last 6 months, they're like, "Hey, what's up? How's it going? We got something going on in next week.
Yep. Are you ready?
Are you available for that?" And you're just like, "Oh, I mean, I haven't heard from you in so long, but sure, I'm available for it." And sometimes that stuff happens, but typically, in terms of like better organization and planning, sometimes we try as much as possible to get things planned ahead of time. I think other companies try to do that as well. And sometimes when sometimes things happen on short notice.
Yep.
From that point on, if we want to do future work with that company, we can work together and talk about how the next thing we do together is more organized and more planned out ahead of time.
So Mindad says, you ask because sometimes companies want to keep things on the down low until it gets closer to a release date and such. So a lot of times companies will target a few key influencers that they really want to work with. This is going to be, maybe if they have a large campaign and they plan to activate 100 people over the course of it, maybe they'll pick 3 to 5 people for this category, sometimes even fewer. And they'll bring these people in, they'll have them under NDA months in advance, and they will work with them closely in the weeks and months leading up to whatever product release or even just announcement. And they'll work with those people specifically. Many times, then the other remaining majority of the portion of people that would be called upon to do promotion, that will likely happen in a shorter term, anywhere between a month's time, which would be a pretty generous lead time, especially if we'll use a sponsored streaming for a game. That's a pretty generous lead time, to 3 to 5 days. Sometimes we'll see as well.
If you're talking to a game company, and they're planning on doing stuff way later, maybe 6 months, 7 months later, it's very good to have that initial conversation, right? But you also have to take into account that there's a huge process for these video game companies to work with influencers, right? The marketing teams, the influencer teams might be reaching out to influencers now, but it might not happen right away. It might not happen in the next 3 months. Sometimes these things they have to get their budgets approved, right? An influencer team or a marketing team has to talk to the higher ups in that company. They have to come up with a way to kind of pitch that these influencers would be available, these content creators would be available for sponsored streaming, and from there they would have to get that budget approved from the higher ups.
Absolutely, and Omid says there are lots of reasons why turnarounds with companies can be short. Incompetence is definitely one of them, but it's usually communications between them and the agency, or them not knowing exactly what they want. Or at the last minute, if they say, hey, we have, this is going awesome, let's dump money into it while it's hot and see how high we can go. I would say that that's 100% true. Incompetence is something that we have encountered, but for the most part, there's just a lot of moving parts in these things. And all that we can do on our end, and if you are an influencer at home or somebody at a brand, just be responsive, be communicative, and things usually work out. even if it happens rather last minute, things usually work out as long as all parties are communicative and continue to stay on the same page about something.
Libra LeBron says, there are a lot of content creators who don't know where to start or what to do when they start being offered stuff and pushing forward with their brand, yourself included. Stuff like this helps you learn because this industry doesn't come with an instruction manual. And like Oliver said, things happen very quickly in the industry, and like all of us are trying to learn as we go. You know, like a lot of us have, like some of us have more experience than others. You know, like we're relatively fresh in the industry, but we have we're always available to kind of help with whatever you might need. If you have any questions, we can try and answer them to the best of our abilities.
Absolutely. And this industry doesn't come with an instruction manual. That's 100% true. When I was going through the interview process here at OPG, I was told that the gaming industry is still, especially the influencer space, live streaming space, content creation, is still very much a Wild West. And a lot of people are still figuring things out, us included. But all we can try and do is help each other. So that's one of the reasons we do this show. And on top of that, we at OPG are super lucky to have awesome clients to work with, as well as awesome partners in the brands that we work with too, to help and grow together.
Cool. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and push this picture of Charles Barkley and move on to non-endemic brands. Cool. So yeah, non-endemic brands. The complete opposite of endemic brands, which we just talked about. Non-endemic brands are basically brands that are not really related to the gaming industry. With the growth of Twitch in this year, 2018, with Ninja doing that huge stream with Drake and Fortnite just blowing up as a weird culture shock to kids, parents, video gamers everywhere. More non-endemic brands are entering the streaming space.
Yes.
So why do non-endemic brands find Twitch so appealing?
Non-endemic brands find Twitch appealing because they can get their products in front of an audience that may not be activated through their other traditional advertising methods. That's the short answer of it. The other reason is that influencers have this kind of magical this magical sauce that comes with them, where they actually get to interact with and engage with their audience in a way that traditional media, television, radio, even newer formats like podcasts could never accomplish beforehand. So they have identified that as a space that both has new eyes, new audiences to be activated, as well as just a different form of media, something that can be more engaging than traditional forms.
Yeah. I definitely read an article pretty recently, and I took it with a grain of salt, right? But I definitely read something about how millennials and newer generations are starting to kind of phase away from traditional television and are looking for the more alternative ways of entertainment, which I think is the main focus nowadays, right? People are phasing away from watching movies on TV and starting to use Netflix and stuff. Kind of similar to how if you were a gamer and you want to watch video game content, a lot of the times there's only two places to go for that, right? There's Twitch, there's YouTube, Mixer, and Facebook Gaming. Before, I think when I was growing up, the one channel that I had on cable television was G4 or Tech TV, right? That was where I had to go back in the day to watch anybody talk about video games or play anything. And that what was that show called? It wasn't Attack of the Show. It was
I know what you're talking about.
It was with Adam Sessler and Morgan West. I can't remember what the name of the show was.
Surely somebody in chat help us out.
X-Play. Yes, X-Play. Thank you. But yeah, Morgan Webb, yes, I was very off, but yes, that's the one. But yeah, that was where I had to go to watch video game content. And nowadays, we have the internet, and it's just so widely available. You know, like children are literally on the internet watching YouTube videos. Like my little brother does that all the time. But yeah, like you know, that's a lot of the content that we have like related to video games, and that's another reason why like Twitch and YouTube are so big.
Yep. So these non-endemic brands find these new audiences and new ways to activate them and new ways to create content that hasn't been created on their products before. Coke has run 1 million TV ads, and there's whole teams that are dedicated to just creating the next advertisement for them. But when they can advertise on Twitch or other content creation spaces, it's a completely new form of content for them. One of the biggest and one of my favorite projects that one of our clients works on is for bodybuilding.com. That's Bajira. He's sponsored by bodybuilding.com and is not only a professional gamer, but has now broken into being a professional bodybuilder as well, competing in competitions and doing extremely well too. So he has found a way to not just attract sponsors for games or for peripheral, headset, etc., that sort of thing. He has found these brands that are willing to sponsor him to create other sorts of content, such as his gym content that he does. So there are a lot of reasons in that way. Other non-endemic brands that I know have stepped into the streaming space, or that would make sense, that just make sense off the top of the bat. Things like energy drinks, right? Or somebody had mentioned Madrinas earlier, coffee companies. Gamers are notorious for staying up late, and many streamers that we all watch, at least here on the West Coast, will start 1 or 2 in the morning. Some of my favorite streamers do. So we have to stay up late to watch them. So, I'm not a coffee guy myself, but I'll have an energy drink or something like that.
Lots of coffee for me.
These guys. Yeah, lots of coffee for Zach.
Yeah.
And other ones, there's I know Soylent does some advertising in the Twitch space too, and that also plays on that classic. Gamers are not necessarily the healthiest eaters on planet Earth. It's a myth because some gamers are the healthiest people that I've ever met in my life. But they can advertise this meal supplement as somebody that you work all day and you come home, you just want to unwind, you don't want to cook, but you can have this meal replacement thing and that's it.
Barry said earlier, it's also possible to somewhat reliably predict the segmentation and/or demographics of a given streamer audience has. A streamer is often able to speak easier about their demographics, unlike some other spaces. What I actually kind of see, what I think about this is, if you're creating content on YouTube, you're not always if you're not YouTube streaming, right? You're not always having that direct engagement with your viewers, right? They could be anybody. They could be someone who just leaves comments in your videos. They could just be lurkers that just want to watch the video for the content. So you're not quite able to gauge what your demographic is like. All you're mostly looking at is the stats, whatever YouTube provides for you, and just kind of whatever sometimes what the comment sections might look like. So with streams, because you have that direct interaction with your audience, you're much easily able to kind of figure out what your audience is like and talk about it more comfortably.
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So that's just a really sort of a little bit of a broad overview on why non-endemic brands would jump into the advertising space. A lot of these brands can be a little bit skeptical about working in such a new advertising space. They just don't know a lot about the space. They know what they know. They know the traditional forms of advertising, oftentimes very well. They know what they're looking for and what they spend, what they expect to get for the money that they put into there. When they're jumping into spending money on a live streamer, they don't necessarily know these things yet. They're not used to working in this space, so they don't know what to expect. What is my money going to get me here, whereas if I put it there instead? So that's a lot of the work that we do here at OPG is educating the brands about entering the streaming space, what they can expect, and effective methods of working with influencers, as well as other methods that are not as effective to maximize what they get out of the money that they put into it. The last thing that any brand wants and any influencer that's working with a brand should want is for that company, after spending, to feel ripped off afterwards. Like, I was promised X, Y, and Z, and I barely got anything out of this. That brand, if they have that kind of bad taste in their mouth, they're less likely to want to spend in the space again, which is unfortunate, because just to have them have the interest in working with like Twitch influencers specifically is something that doesn't always come super fast for a lot of brands. So they're still working on catching up. So the more we can do to educate and help on that side is I think best for everybody.
Yeah, definitely agree on that one. Cool. So yeah, with that, I'm gonna push the last face we have on here, which is Shaquille O'Neal with an eye patch, to move on to effective brand sponsorships.
Yes.
Cool. So creating an effective brand sponsorship campaign consists of like a variety of different factors, right? Most of the time, we find that influencers and like content creators on Twitch are better at brand awareness rather than brand awareness and like kind of promotional partnerships, right? Like talking about things and talking about things that they like, talking about products that they enjoy, rather than direct sales.
Yes. So that is why we'll always steer companies away from just pure performance-based partnerships, such as affiliate programs, to true promotional deals, sponsorships of somebody's channel or content on somebody's channel.
Yeah.
Just because they can, and all of these brands do have salespeople. Once they get to a certain size, they will have a sales team of people that work on both salary and commission to sell their products. These people don't have the reach and audience, so they're the ones that are going to do the hard work on the ground, the prospecting, the repeated follow-ups, et cetera, to get those conversions. We will steer these companies, when they're working with influencers, to do brand awareness campaigns. Let their audience know, hey, this is the product or the brand that we're promoting here. Let me tell you about them. Let me tell you why I like them and what they can potentially do for you if you're in the market.
Typically, I mean, like, as a streamer, I would think like if you're deciding to work with a sponsor, and they're looking for like a commission-based, type of sponsorship or something that's directly performance-based, I would kind of say like it works against you in a way, because you'd be working very hard to promote like a product and like meet a quota, right? You'd be working very hard to kind of sell things to your viewers rather than, comfortably talk about things.
Yeah.
And, sometimes your viewers can see that, right? They can see you trying to push that on them rather than, just talking about it casually.
Absolutely. And they like, you notice that too. We all notice that when we're watching content of any form. It's like you can tell when somebody's trying to sell something to you, because it can oftentimes be a little bit blunt and not necessarily have the same kind of finesse or same just natural feeling as less in your face tactics can, if that makes sense. If it's more of a brand awareness, brand partnership, their audience sees, whatever streamer that they watch wear these headphones every day and use them, and they'll think, man, I don't know how he streams 8 hours a day with these headphones on, and they ask, and they says, yeah, I use these headphones because they're super comfortable. I really like them. They're actually sponsors of my channel. And if you want to look them up for yourself, click the link below the stream. etc. Like they see these folks using these products or playing these games, and it comes naturally to them.
Definitely. Yeah, basically from our experience, like we've definitely seen like brand awareness excel and work work perfectly because the communication between the sponsor and the streamer is like based just kind of on showcasing what they have to offer and enjoying the products that they're using. And just having that organic match between the brand and the influencer is a huge win for both sides.
Exactly. And if an influencer is on a very strict quota or is on more of like a sales-based, direct sales sort of program with a company, then maybe that company meets with them once a month or periodically. And if sales haven't been good, and the company says, hey, these numbers, where are they? We need these numbers or it's not going to continue. Then what sort of motivation do you think that streamer is going to have? It can go a couple of ways. Either they'll say, these are unattainable. I'm never gonna see these, and they may get discouraged or give up. Or on the other side, they may just get hyper into it and just start trying to sell, which can come off as a bit disingenuous to an audience.
Definitely. So yeah, the goals of the campaign definitely need to be clear and communicated through both sides. Like one of the questions you want to ask are like, what are the main KPIs, which is like key performance indicator, right?
Yep.
Are you looking to get viewer minutes? Are you looking to get views? What are you looking for? When you have that conversation, you're able to understand what the sponsor is looking for, and that kind of allows you to work better with them as well.
Exactly. So that's something that we always work to identify with companies when they approach one of our clients wanting to work with them. Say, what are you looking for out of this campaign? What are your measurables? When we are giving our a roll-up report at the end of whatever the sponsorship term is, what do you want to see? What do you want to see that this content creator has delivered for you? And then they can let you know. Companies that have worked in the space a lot of times will already know what they want. And we'll be able to tell you that, communicate it with you pretty effectively. And if they're newer to the space, a lot of times you asking that question, they'll be impressed, just as Oliver says here, and it'll make them think about it. KPI is key performance indicator. So that if the company that is looking to sponsor one of our clients or any other streamer content creator, they could say, hey, what we really want to do is we really want to drive signups on our website. So if you can include this tracking link to, in a panel and in a chatbot link in that'll play periodically to your audience, that sends people to the sign up form. It'll get people there, and then all they have to do is just actually fill this thing out. Yep, chatbot, I said it. Yeah, of course. Just as Barry says, those key performance indicators are measurements on how successful a sponsorship is in the sponsoring party's eyes. So a lot of these, Zach mentioned beforehand, are things like viewer minutes. How many people watched every minute or every hour of content that that an individual content creator produced? How many eyes were exposed over this period of time? That's a really big one for us here because it's a very close comparison to traditional advertising measurements when companies are putting ads on TV or something like that. These programs, if a company is promoting their product on Thursday Night Football, they know about what Thursday Night Football's ratings are, what their numbers are, how many people are going to be watching at home. They can use that to gauge, I'm spending this much money to get my product in front of this many projected eyes, and then how does this measure out in the end? Did we come above? Did we end up below? What are the reasons behind that? That's a lot of the work that we also do on the back end of things in wrap-ups of campaigns to figure out ways that certain campaigns really succeeded, or on the other hand, how a campaign perhaps could have been more successful. That's just one example. Other examples are click-throughs on a trackable link. Sales of a game is a key performance indicator for some. It's one that we will that we personally don't recommend to brands, just because those conversions are not immediate, and it can be incredibly hard to assign that sale to an influencer. If I watch a game on Twitch and then at its launch and I say that game looks awesome, but I just don't have $60 right now, but it goes on the Steam winter sale and it's $30, I was like, I need something to play. It's a good deal. I'm gonna pick it up, but there's no way for that cookie to track that I clicked through that link, 5 months ago when the game was launched. Even if that person did directly influence my purchase of the game or whatever product it was. So that's something that we usually tend to steer folks away from. Trying to think of other key performance indicators that folks use, but those are some big measurables that companies will look for, that will inform what they're looking for out of a campaign.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Joe talked about when I was gone, but I think one of the other big things that's huge for a lot of companies is Twitter impressions, right?
Yes, I did not talk about that.
Okay,
Very
cool.
good point.
So yeah, a lot of what comes hand in hand with streaming is a lot of like Twitter as well.
Yeah.
I think it's very important for content creators to kind of like get set up on Twitter and engage with other influencers in the space. From being able to do that, like they're also pulling in a lot of their own viewers and people, like their audiences on Twitter as well, where they can chat about things that are both like about the stream and also about like that's outside the stream.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely one of the biggest things is having a strong social, and a lot of companies will more than often like look for social media impressions, just kind of like general likes and tweets, and any engagement they can look for. When it comes to doing any promotional work. Like, I'd say you'll rarely find like any opportunities that kind of like, go just over like streaming without any like social media promotion at all.
Yep. And many of you that watch Office Hours regularly will have heard us say this before, but something that we will always recommend to any content creator that's looking to work with brands either now or in the future is to work on your social media platforms. If you decide you want to do Twitter, if you decide you want to do Instagram as well, build those platforms along with your primary platform, if that's Twitch, YouTube, Mixer, Facebook gaming, whatever under the sun. Build those social media channels alongside, because a lot of these campaigns that we see will have those both like sponsored content as well as social media content. And a little fun fact, if you have a large social media following, you can charge more for those rates. You are getting whatever content in front of more eyes. And as such, you can charge more for it and put a little bit of extra money in your pocket.
Yeah, definitely. As a streamer looking to work with brands, like, one of the biggest things that you should take a look at, like stop and take a look at, is like, how much value am I bringing to these companies? Like, how many viewers do I have? What's my audience normally like? Like, do I really think my audience is built for, like, do I really think I can influence my audience to like purchase things from a certain company, right? You'll sometimes find, like, if you stream a lot of like free-to-play games, sometimes like, some of your audience, they're there to watch, like, you play a free-to-play game, so they probably play a free-to-play game. If they play that one free-to-play game all the time, like, and they're like for example, like League of Legends, and like they focus on League of Legends, then there's probably not like a whole lot like an audience for like buying varieties of games, right? If you only play League of Legends all the time, your audience is going to be accustomed to watching you play League of Legends, and that's probably what they usually do too. It's not really likely for them to like purchase other games if your main content is League of Legends.
Yes, and that's an excellent point too. Brands do look at these things, and especially if they have been working in the space for a while, they'll understand that too. The different audiences of various games. For example, World of Warcraft is one that I love to pick on. as I play it myself. And that audience tends to now be a little bit older, and they also have the money to purchase the new expansions when they come out. They have the money to pay for that monthly subscription. And there are downtimes in WoW too, which just in between big content updates. So those gamers are looking for other things to play after they've cleared whatever current content is in the game. So a lot of people will work to do they'll know that those World of Warcraft audiences will have, on average, they'll have a little bit of money in their pockets to spend on whatever product that streamer's promoting. Whereas if it's a free-to-play game, your chances of having a younger audience or an audience that just plain doesn't have extra money, there's no shame in it, doesn't have a lot of extra money to spend on new games or new products, they'll be less likely to engage with products that they have to buy.
Very true. Yeah. And by the way, chat, thank you guys so much. Like, you guys are hitting us with like all these awesome questions, and it just keeps us going and gives us a lot to talk about.
Yes.
Just to circle back on Benobi 2119's question, brands do research on potential content creators' social media. Is it a good idea / helpful as a content creator to look at a sponsor's social media? Absolutely.
Yep.
It just kind of if you're already interested in that brand in the first place, then you should kind of you might have an idea of what they might be like, but their social media team might be completely different. So it's kind of a good way to just check out what their social media is like, observe any patterns in the way they post things. What I mean by patterns is sometimes their social media team and their branding has a specific tone. Right?
Yep.
They might be the way they talk on social media might be completely different than how the brand is represented. A really good example of this is like Wendy's and Arby's, right? It's really funny, but I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, but they have hilarious social media accounts, right? So it kind of gives you an idea of what they are in the digital space and what their social media teams are like. I mean, it's just a fast food joint, right? You go in, you buy a cheeseburger or a roast beef sandwich wherever you're going.
That 4 meal.
Yeah, that 4 meal, right?
Gets me every time.
their Twitters are amazing. Arby's Twitter, for example, all they do is they make cardboard cutouts using I think Arby's drink cups and stuff like that, and all types of Arby's related things, and they'll make a bunch of Nintendo characters. And they'll do they just do a lot of hilarious pop culture references. And then Wendy's, for example, their Twitter, they just roast on people all the time.
Yeah.
Specifically other fast food competitors, right?
Yeah.
They did a rap battle between McDonald's and Wendy's at one point, and Wendy's just roasted them super hard. It makes me curious to figure out who are the writers behind the Wendy's social media team. But yeah, definitely doing a deep dive into the brand that you're looking to work for is social media can be very beneficial to you, just because it helps you understand what their content looks like.
Absolutely. To go back to another question that Min.Odd asked, is there a kind of seasonal time that companies try and have more sponsorship work done? And yes, that does make sense. So companies will look to do sponsorship work a few different times in the year, and it really is up to whatever company and what they plan on doing. Budgets will open up usually in Q1, and planning will go into that before that. But a lot of times those budgets will open up. Companies won't necessarily know where all of their marketing money will lie until about that time, at which point they can sort of halt talking on the speculative and actually say, we have this money, we want to do this, let's talk. So around the beginning of the fiscal year, as well as each fiscal quarter of the year, budgets open up for marketing, and that's oftentimes a good time that companies want to start doing sponsored work. The other would be around key feature or product releases. So if a certain company is launching We'll use Activision. They're launching Call of Duty 18 and a half, and they want to do a lot of promotion around that. You know what I mean? So they will have these launch dates projected and planned out, and they'll have marketing budgets allocated to go along with those campaigns to be a part of it.
You said Call of Duty 18 and a half.
Yeah, and I've played a lot of them. I'm guilty.
Yeah. I'll keep going.
Yeah. Other things would be new features of a product or of a brand. If a brand is launching, we'll use Razer as an example too. If they're releasing a new generation of keyboard or they're releasing a new desktop microphone or something like that, they may be looking to do some promotion around that. Or DLC content for games. Really, anytime that there's a new feature launch, product launch, or sort of new fiscal period of the year opening up, that's when they may or may not have some money to spend and will be looking to do sponsored work.
Minadot says he works in IT, and a lot of the IT companies he sees usually dump their monies into IT upgrades before the end of the fiscal year. In a way that somehow that can apply to companies in the video game industry as well, but it could also work the opposite way, right? It just really depends on the company and what they're planning on doing with their budgets, right?
Absolutely.
At the end of the year, they could be looking to just dump a lot of money and look for a huge social media post, a huge a Twitch campaign, YouTube campaign. But sometimes it's quite the opposite, where towards the end of the year, they're pretty much already done. They're working on figuring out what the recap is for 2018.
Yep.
They're figuring out what worked, what didn't work, and from there they're also determining hey, I think we're done for the year. Let's just cut it off. Let's have our budget cuts and reevaluate what 2019 would look like.
Absolutely. So Benobi says you talked before that brands won't script a content creator. Does that apply to social media posts, or do most brands want scripted posts? Most brands that we work with will usually have recommended tags and hashtags and @ tags that they will like a client to or was sponsor, somebody that they are sponsoring to reference. To drive traffic to their own Twitter page, as well as to get that coveted, hashtag spot on Twitter, if that makes any sense. To have those hashtags and those posts trend amongst audiences that follow those circles.
You asked, does it apply to social media posts, or do most brands want scripted posts? I like to think that a lot of brands are very flexible in the way they do social media marketing, but they do want a certain message to be conveyed, right? There's talking points that need to be covered. There's certain hashtags that are required. Obviously, you're going to need to use your FTC disclosures and say that sponsored work, hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored, or just saying that you're sponsored or getting paid for this opportunity is very important. Some brands might want to do something very scripted, and at that point you want to evaluate if that's worth it, right? Do you really want to send out a scripted tweet that looks like you would see something on the promoted section of Twitter? And sometimes you can, if there's a way to push back on that, and if you don't think it's going to work well for your audience, then I think that's okay. But sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes they definitely need the language to be a certain way, and it might need to be scripted. The biggest conflict is if you really, really want to work with this brand, you absolutely love their products, but they're very sticklers about how you write their tweet. It's really up to you on a personal level to decide whether or not you want to move forward with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to how scripted content on Twitch or YouTube looks, scripted social media posts can also really, really look they can stick out like a sore thumb on otherwise more, shall we say, colorful Twitter feeds. If somebody's Twitter feed is full of normally full of dad jokes, I'll think of one on one of our clients who's pretty notorious for that. And then all of a sudden they have this very clearly brand written social media post on there that just doesn't fit with the rest of their content, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb, and audiences may not be as receptive to it as something that is more typical to their normal content. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. I've and there's many creative ways to actually do sponsored tweets that don't necessarily fit in like what the sponsor was looking for, but can actually really impress them.
Yes.
And we've seen that done a lot before. So a lot of times, some sponsors will send you what they're looking for in a tweet. They'll send you the basic requirements, but sometimes they don't mention something that can be a complete game changer for a sponsored tweet. And that is use rich media with your sponsored tweet, right? Rich media basically covers like anything from like an image, like a GIF, a video clip, or anything that that just kind of like anything in a media form that can go along with your Twitter outside of just text, right? And I've seen like amazing ways of this being utilized, right? Sometimes it's more than just like a simple image that says like ad content on it with like a picture of the product. Sometimes it could be even a commercial that, GIF.
Yeah, he meant GIF.
GIF. Man.
Not like the Jiffy peanut butter.
Yeah, GIF. Man, that really threw me off. But yeah. Anyways, like anything like from like a small commercial that someone have probably created like in their own time. Like, hey, like anything that you can really think of that's fun, that can be incorporated to a sponsored tweet that's also like brand friendly.
Absolutely.
That could be very huge.
Yep.
And sponsors will notice that and they'll be like, wow, this is awesome.
So if you are sponsored to do some social media posts along with your sponsored content, then you can either just do a super generic, hey, I'm playing this game, click the link to buy the game, #ad, or you can spruce it up a little bit, maybe include a fun GIF or a screenshot of you playing the game, or some funky feature of it, or something like that, and it can just be a lot better. Let's be honest. Yep.
Yeah, I'm.
Thanks, Davey. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think if you have like another tweet lined up, or if like the tweet is scheduled after your stream, where it kind of like, hey, like this is what I did on stream today, right? And I'm sure like as a streamer, there's definitely like moments that you create on stream where you're having fun playing a game. Whether it's like with you streaming with other friends and you guys just joking about things, or if it's just like like an insane moment that you saw, or it's like a clip that one of your audience members seen, you could include that in your sponsored tweet as long as it's brand friendly and it adheres to what they're looking for, and that hypes up your audience in a very organic way, and it just makes like sponsors happy when they see that type of stuff. They like to see that little bit of extra effort that's not too much work, but like it's just very creative.
And especially if it's something that, I mean, if you've already streamed the game and you already have some of this content already, it's something that is not a ton of extra work for you, but can mean a lot to brands. Don't go out of your way necessarily like spending 2 full work days creating this custom video for a social media post that you're not being paid to do all of that content produced for, but like put a little effort into it and it can show.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm not trying to give Sequisha a run for his money. I don't.
He definitely is, man. Definitely
is.
is.
That man's mustache is majestic, and we're not there yet.
We're just missing. You should get like a disco ball up in here, dude. And just like have it like hang down and shine some reflecting lights at us. No, I'm not ripping on your stash. I like your stash, dude. It's cool. You look like a detective, like Detective Klopp.
So that's what I'm going for, baby.
Like parkour, parkour over like the roof of a car.
I'm not built for
like
parkour.
Jump over it.
That is
with
not.
With a snub-nosed pistol and catch the bad guys.
I need my aviators. Detective Pikachu's partner. They didn't call me. They didn't call me.
Yeah, they should have called Joe.
They locked. I'm way cheaper than Ryan Reynolds too. Like way cheaper than
Ryan Reynolds is Pikachu. You're talking about the partner here, you know.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. I could. Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. That's very true.
For the sequel, maybe. Yeah, Detective Squirtle. Oh, Squirtle Squad. Yeah.
Squirtle
Get
Squad?
signed up for that one.
I could do it. Ginger body double.
Oh. He's okay. Joe's not a ginger, all right. He's strawberry blonde.
Zach has my
Strawberry
back
blonde.
here. He knows. He knows.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Zach, that's why brands want to work with sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything else to add?
Nope. Did you guys have any questions for us? I think we can like jump into a quick Q&A
Yeah.
before we end the show. If not, I think we'll just call it from here.
Yeah. If anybody else has questions about working with brands or questions about content creation and working in the business of it, the business side of things, feel free to ask away. Otherwise, we thank you guys for all tuning in today. We really appreciate your time. Hopefully this was helpful in some capacity. If you have any other questions on this topic in particular, if it comes to you later or just about anything in general, feel free to shoot a tweet out with the hashtag AskOPG, and we will get to it on our next show. We might just tweet back to you. Thank you, Barry, for linking our Twitter right there. Feel free to reach out for anything in the space. We're busy, but we will get back to you. And in the meantime, we hope that you guys all have a great weekend.
Yeah, definitely. To answer your question, Stabby, never. It's never going to happen. It's real unfortunate. But yeah, never going to happen. And as a reminder, we will not be around next Friday. No show next week. But we should be back the week after.
Yep. So you can expect the next episode of Office Hours then. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.